would scream, "Just let me have my hands." It didn't seem like too much to ask for a 15-year-old boy. Most of my friends were trying to decide what they were going to wear the next day to school. I wasn't sure if I would wake up the next morning. And even through this depression and difficulty, I had decided, however, that I was going to give everything I had in therapy. The therapy was hard, monotonous, tiresome. But my continued progress, a loving mother, and a caring therapist made it all worth it until Daniel came. Daniel had been in an accident that was similar to mine, but he had escaped with complete use of his arms and hands and partial use of his legs. Every day he'd come into that therapy room only to hear the therapist ask him the same question he'd asked hundreds of times before. "Dan, should we work with your arms today? Should we see what we can do with your hands?" Only to hear his all too familiar response, "I want to watch my legs. Maybe today is the day that they'll work." I became so frustrated with him. "Don't you see what you have?" I thought. "Don't you understand all the blessings and opportunities that are yours just because you can move your hands? Don't you understand that you have access to a world that I can only hope for, that I can only dream of? And yet you're so wrapped up in what you don't have, you can't even see it." Frustrated and disgusted, I went back to my room that day, and as I did, I passed the room of a friend, Rich Hollinger. I pulled into his room and started to talk to him, and as I did, I noticed that he wore a leather brace on his wrist. It seemed curious to me that he wore these braces. I'd worn similar braces near the beginning of my injury, but had gotten strong enough that I no longer needed them, and he had been in the hospital longer than I had. And so I asked why he wore them, and in his reply, he had his wife come over and remove the brace from his wrist, and his wrist fell. He explained to me that his break in his neck was one pinhead higher than mine. And that because it was, he was unable to move his wrists. I went back to my room that night so ashamed. As I lay there in bed, I moved my wrist up and down, up and down. I began to think about all the blessings and opportunities that were mine, that I had become too selfish to overlook. I found everything that in myself that I hated in Dan. I had spent the bulk of my time concentrating on what I did not have when I should have been focusing on what I did have. Centering my efforts on wishing for different circumstances, I had become totally oblivious to my life's blessings. This oblivion caused my outlook on life to become tarnished. It affected the way that I dealt with others, my zeal for life, and the way that I felt about myself. However, with this new realization, I began to feel more blessed. And as I felt more blessed, I became more thankful. And as I became more thankful, I developed a new sense of worth, which brought with it a newfound vigor for life. That day I learned that a champion's heart is always a thankful.